What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music. I am back with another record roundup video. I've got 7 records here that I've had in my possession for a while now. And while I do appreciate all the records here, I have discovered that I really just don't have that much to say on all of them. So rather than trying to make individual videos for all of these records that would probably all come out to be like 2 or 3 minutes a piece, I'm just gonna put all of them in this video and let you know why I think they're worth checking out. So with that being said, yeah, let's talk about these guys. Easy one. I'm just going to get this one out the way right now. This is the Kon Amir Off Track Volume 1, The Bronx, released on BBE Records in 2007. And I was a huge fan of their Off Track Volume 3. I still need to get my hands on Volume 2. Volume 3 was this amazing collection of Afro jazz, deep disco, some boogie stuff. And it's been one of my favorite records in my collection for the longest time. And going from that scene is how this was Volume 1. I figured I should probably add it to my collection at some point. It's pretty much exactly what I was looking for. Lots of deep disco, a little bit of boogie mixed in, some funk, a little bit more jazz than I was expecting. And in some of the picks from DJ Amir actually go into some different world territory that I wasn't expecting. So it's a great collection of deep music that is going to be otherwise really difficult, nigh impossible to get your hands on. And it's just a really cool compilation. So if you ever run across a copy of this guy, yeah, don't sleep on it. Definitely a worthy addition to any deep, obscure record music fans' collection. Next up, we got this Nino Nardini Jungle Obsession, originally released in 1970, I believe, and this is the rejoint 2000s reissue. God, I just absolutely love the hideous green, the imagery, and just the overall cheap aesthetic to this reissue. It just has a late 90s, turn of the millennium aesthetic quality to the graphic design on it. This was a library record that really wasn't on my radar. It was recommended to me from someone on Twitter. Shoutouts to Shell Sounds for putting me on to Nino Nardini, who is a French library composer who is pretty prolific. And the one thing I will say about this record that differentiates itself from a lot of library music out there is that it's not quite as funk and soul heavy as a lot of the library music that I'm usually into. This one seems to have a little bit more of a rock pop bent to it, and there's a lot of stuff on here that's really, really catchy. And the overall just sort of surf rock, islandish atmosphere that slots in perfectly with the lazy Sunday laid back atmosphere of all the tracks on here is really, really cool. It's well arranged. There are some funky tracks on here. There's some really cool soundscapey soundtrack sort of stuff on here. The arrangements are solid. I like the use of early synthesizers that pop up on here, specifically on the highlight track for me, which is the title track, Jungle Obsession, which also features some really cool bongos on it as well. Yeah, and it's just a really cool rock, more rock influenced library record. If you're one of those guys that are looking for more sort of break heavy library records, this isn't what you're looking for. But if you're just looking for a library record with a wide variety of sounds that's got some pop hooks to it, yeah, this Nino Nardini Jungle Obsession, pretty solid record. And I'm really glad that someone put me onto this guy. Next up, we've got the Heriton Salvini record, the Zavana Uma Iha do Amor. I think I said that all right. It's a soundtrack to an obscure Brazilian obscure Brazilian record. And much like the Nino Nardini, as opposed to a lot of library-esque records, although this was actually made for a movie, and I know absolutely nothing about it. But it still has that library vibe. There's tons of atmosphere, tons of rich string arrangements. I've heard Salvini be compared to Arthur Verocai, which I think is a pretty apt comparison. Lots of strings, some synths, some really, really cool guitar, a good mix of so many different genres: rock, pop, samba, jazz, a little bit of AOR, and just every track on here is expertly arranged. It's not one of those records that I'm really obsessed with, but I really do enjoy the music on here quite a bit. And with the reissue put out by Mad About Records, this is a much more affordable way if you're looking to get into obscure Brazilian movie soundtracks. You might want to check this one out, and especially if you're a fan of library music, you might want to give this one a listen. Next up, this was one of the most random picks that I've gotten as of late. This is DJ Rhettmatic's Rhett's Got Beats, released on Street Corner Music in 2017. I knew about this record for a while, didn't know what to think about it. From the one track that I had heard, Stratosphere, it sounded like a pretty cool Dilla-ish style beat, funky drums, some cool atmosphere, and some interesting sample chops. And that's pretty much it. I will say, there are some moments on here that are way, way grimier than I had expected, and some of these tracks hit way harder than I had expected for a record that really didn't seem like it was going to stand out to me that much. I know DJ Rhettmatic much more as one of the most skilled DJs around, and as it turns out, he's actually a pretty skilled beat maker. So I'm pleasantly surprised with this record. If you like Dilla-esque beats, if you like street corner music, this one's kind of a no-brainer, and highly recommend that you check it out. Next up, another record that I randomly picked up from Razor and Tape. This is Underdog Edits, a double 12-inch. So each track gets its own side, so the pressing on this record is impeccable, and they're just some really good disco edits. I don't know any of these tracks in their original form, but the job that Underdog did with these edits, they're so club friendly. They're really, really uniquely and creatively done, and I really just enjoy the vibe on this record all the way around. I've already played a few of them in a Live from the Record Room live stream, and if you want to go check that out, you can do so over here, and you can hear some of these tracks for yourself. Disco edits are one of those things that's kind of hard to talk about in detail. I mean, they sound like disco with a little bit of a house bump to it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about them. If you're interested in a little bit more DJ-friendly disco kind of stuff, yeah, Underdog Edits from Razor and Tape, a super worthy addition to my record collection. I'm really happy to have this. Specifically, the track on here, Drum John. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. You have to hear it to believe it for yourself. Up, we got Seijo Collapse, a Japanese electronic music producer who put out an album on Leaving Records in 2016. It's a pretty cool record. I don't know, it doesn't really stick in my mind all that much. I've listened to it a few times, and I haven't been super obsessed with going back and listening to it, but every time I throw it on, it's a pretty cool record. It's kind of like a more abstract Muramasa from his Soundtrack to a Death kind of way, so there's some bass music elements to it, and he's kind of mixing in a little bit of IDM as well, so there's quite a bit of like shape-shifting sounds that teeter on being almost dance floor friendly, but then just get into sort of non-linear weird territory that would probably turn off most dance floors that weren't expecting something like this. That being said, I really don't have that much to say about it. It's a cool record. I like some of the found sounds that he uses as percussion and sonic textural elements in this. Other than that, I don't know. It's kind of whatever to me. It's cool enough. Check it out for yourself. Maybe you might like it more than me, but yeah. I really just don't have that much to say about it, to be honest. This is that Don Karate record that I talked about a few months back. I'll say up front, the first track, Ice Age, is absolutely awesome. It's got that Jay Dilla swing with live instrumentation. The drums on it are spectacular. There's a cool feel to it. I was really hoping to get a whole album of that, and what I got instead was basically an electronic pop album that has some really cool elements and some truly miserable vocals on it. Specifically, the second song, I Wish, I absolutely cannot stand, and it's one of my least favorite tracks I've heard in a long time. Pro tip for any of you songwriters out there, never use I wish as a writing crux where every sentence of your lyrics start with the words I wish, because generally what comes out of lyrics like that is going to be super cringe, and this song is one of the cringiest things I've heard in a long time. The rest of the record's fine. It's got some cool textures, it's got some cool melodies, blah blah blah. I'm kind of just talking out of my ass at this point, but of all the records that I've picked up in a while, this one really let me down, because from the promise of that first track, I was really hoping to get a whole album of that, and I know I really shouldn't use my expectations of what an album should sound like as a way to criticize it, but yeah, it's a really poor representation of what the rest of the record is, and the rest of the record honestly just isn't that interesting. So yeah, you could probably skip this one, maybe get a digital copy of it, but yeah, this isn't one that I'm going to be going back to anytime soon. So yeah, bit of a letdown. Whatever. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching. If you've checked out any of these records that I talked about in this video, please let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. If you want to hear any of these records for yourself, please head over to my WordPress. There you can check out audio links to any of the records that I talk about on this channel, as well as make sure you're here every Sunday, either 2 p.m. or 8 p.m. Japan Standard Time. Follow me on Twitter, as I will post when I will be going live that day. There you can hear me play records like the ones that I talk about in these videos, as well as a whole host of other records that I don't get a chance to talk about on this channel. Links to everything, as always, down in the description. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. So until then, peace out!